5 spot today we have John Allen Muhammad and John Lee Malvo. This pair is referred to as the DC Snipers, and they were responsible for a series of coordinated attacks during a 3-week period in October of 2002. The pair took the lives of 10 people and critically injured 3 others during this spree, although their crimes spanned even before this and involved even more people. Their crimes were random and terrifying. People would just be going about their everyday tasks when this horrific pair would strike. In September of 2003, John Allen was sentenced to death, and this sentence was carried out in November of 2009. John Lee, on the other hand, was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences, but very recently it was determined that his sentence needs to be re-looked at because of his young age when the crimes were committed. In our number 4 spot today we have Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. A 2-for-1 of the most horrific kind, this pair was often referred to as the Toolbox Killers. They received this name because most of what they used to commit their crimes would be items normally stored in a household toolbox. The pair committed 5 of these crimes in Southern California over a 5-month period in 1979. In the end, Lawrence was sentenced to death, and Roy, who accepted a plea bargain and agreed to testify against Lawrence, received a life sentence. Lawrence died of natural causes while on death row in December of 2019, as did Roy at the California Medical Facility in 2020. Number 3 spot today we have Robert Hansen. Robert is often referred to as the Butcher Baker. He is one of the most prolific serial killers in Alaska's history because for over a decade he would kidnap women and bring them into the wilderness where he would then stalk them like prey. The reason he got away with his crimes for so long is because outside of these horrifying crimes, he was just a soft-spoken baker. Robert was heading to church by day and prowling the streets at night. What led to the downfall of this horrible monster was a badass named Cindy Paulson, who was able to escape from Robert and was sure to leave evidence behind. She then went to authorities and told them what happened, and this led to a search warrant for Robert's property, which is where all the evidence they needed lied. Robert is believed to have taken the lives of at least 17 women, and in 1983 he was sentenced to 461 years and a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In our number 2 spot today we have William Bonin. This horrible person is said to be responsible for taking the lives of 21 young men in Southern California from May of 1979 to June 1980. It is said that on at least 12 of these occasions he was assisted by one of his 4 known accomplices, and it is even speculated that he might be responsible for 15 more of these crimes that evidence hasn't officially been able to connect him to. He was often referred to as the Freeway Killer because of the fact that most of the bodies were found along the freeway of Southern California. The police surveilled William until they could catch him in the act, which they did. In the beginning he claimed innocence. I mean, they caught him in the act. It's kind of dumb to claim innocence, but after receiving an impassioned letter from one of the victim's mothers, which asked him to please share the location of her son's body, he confessed his guilt. But he made sure to clarify that it wasn't so the mother could be at peace or so that her pain could be eased. No, of course not. Instead he said, quote, "I was dying for a hamburger and I knew if I went out with the cops they would get me a hamburger." At his first trial, the prosecutor described him as, quote, "the most arch-evil person who ever existed." William was convicted on 14 of his crimes and was sentenced to death. He spent 14 years on death row before his sentence was carried out in 1996. In our number 1 spot today we have Israel Keyes. Israel is quite a prolific serial killer and truly is a terrifying person. While everyone on this list is horrible, Israel is particularly scary because of the fact that he had no MO or type. He just killed at random. In fact, he was so prepared for these random crimes that he left kill kits all over the US so that he would be prepared for whenever whoever he chose crossed his path. It isn't quite clear how many of these crimes he committed, and many missing persons reports that are still open could potentially be linked to him. It is said that Israel had a sort of admiration and obsession with other prolific serial killers like Ted Bundy or Robert Hansen, who we already talked about today. He even said, quote, "I probably know every single serial killer that's ever been written about. It's kind of a hobby of mine." So creepy. In March of 2012, Israel was finally apprehended and was to stand trial for his crimes, but unfortunately while waiting for trial, he went on to take his own life. He left behind a note and a drawing of 11 skulls, which led authorities to believe that this may be the number of victims he had.